What if I told you that you could build a project that's supposed to take a whole year in just 76 days, and with a tiny fraction of the team? It sounds totally impossible, right? Well, there's a story, kinda buried in a recent Amazon shareholder letter, that shows exactly how they did it. And trust me, this isn't just about fancy new tech. It's a playbook for building a culture that moves at an unbelievable, almost scary speed.
Okay, just look at this for a second. On the left, you've got the original plan to rebuild Bedrock, which is Amazon's big engine for AI models. It was going to take 40 engineers a full year. Now look at the right. The new reality, a tiny team of just 6, count them, 6 engineers, did the whole thing from scratch in 76 days. The difference is just wild. Yeah, we're talking about a more than 30 times compression in effort. This isn't just a little bit of improvement. It's not, some small efficiency gain. This is a complete, fundamental shift in how you can build really complex software. So, the big question is, how on earth did they do it?
So here's the game plan for this explainer. First, we're going to break down the story of that insane rewrite. Then we'll get into the philosophy that even made it possible. We'll walk through a 5-part playbook for dealing with massive change, and we'll see how culture is really the secret ingredient. And then we're going to finish with one crucial question every single person who builds things needs to ask themselves.
So it all started with this moment of sheer panic. The Bedrock team had this terrifying realization. Their core engine wasn't just slow, it was architecturally wrong for where they needed to go. So instead of just slapping some duct tape on it, they spun up a tiny team to rewrite the entire thing from the ground up. And they called this new superfast system Mantle, and it became the brand new foundation for everything. Now, this is where it gets really interesting, because it's about the philosophy behind it all. Amazon CEO Andy Jassy, he basically says that long-term progress is never a straight line. It's messy, it zigs, it zags, it hits a wall, and sometimes you have to be willing to go all the way back to the very beginning. And that's the core idea right there. The companies that actually make it, the ones that survive, aren't the ones with these perfect, clean roadmaps. No way. They're the ones whose culture can actually handle the messiness of reality. They can take a complete reset on the chin and just keep on going. So how do you build that kind of resilience? Well, Jassy's letter actually lays out this 5-part playbook for navigating those squiggly lines. And you can almost think of it as a design guide for building a truly modern, agile company. All right, so the first 3 steps are really about setting the stage. You got to be inventing whole new categories, not just tweaking old ones. You need to be running multiple experiments at the same time because you don't know which one's going to work. And then, when you find something that is clearly a game changer, you have to bet the farm on it. And if you want to see what betting big looks like, look at their bet on AI. 3 years after it launched, the original Amazon Web Services was on track for about $58 million a year. Pretty good, right? Well, at the exact same point in its life, Amazon's AI business is on track for $15 billion a year. Let that sink in for a second. That is 260 times larger. So when they see a huge opportunity like AI, they don't just, dip a toe in the water. They go all in with absolutely overwhelming force. And this number just brilliantly shows you the scale of that bet. We're talking about a plan to spend around $200 billion in capital expenditures in 2026 alone. And most of that is for AWS infrastructure to power this whole new world. Okay, that brings us to the 4th and honestly the most critical lesson here. This is the one that really enabled the Mantle rewrite. It's this willingness to go all the way back to the starting line. Because in the world we live in now, the cost of refusing to start over is often way, way higher than the cost of actually doing it. And look, Mantle wasn't some one-off fluke. They did the exact same thing with Alexa. They replaced its entire brain while it was live for hundreds of millions of people. And the result? User conversations doubled, and people bought 3 times more stuff through their device. Radical rewrites get you radical results. This quote from the source it hits the nail on the head. If your big plan for the future is just to slap a chat interface on some old, clunky database, you're not innovating. You're just polishing technical debt. You're just making the old thing look a little shinier. Real progress means being willing to rebuild. So, this all leads to the big question. What actually unlocks the ability to do these crazy, radical rewrites? It's not just about better tools, and it's not even about having smarter engineers. The final lesson from Jassy's playbook, the real secret sauce here is the culture. And a culture that can handle those squiggly lines, it has some really specific traits. You've got to have truth tellers, people who will tell you the hard stuff, and you actually have to listen to them. You have to let teams act like they own the place. You got to embrace the messy middle and just keep experimenting. And This is a big one. You have to be willing to totally reimagine how work even gets done in the first place.
And that, right there, that's the heart of it all. Think about this. The Mantle team didn't waste 2 months in meetings and making PowerPoints trying to convince a dozen layers of management to let them do the right thing. No, the permission was already baked into the culture. They just needed the 76 days to actually go and do the work.
This is the ultimate competitive advantage, you know? It's a culture that gets rid of the bureaucracy, it gets rid of the friction of having to ask permission for everything. It's a culture that trusts small, empowered teams to make bold moves and to make them fast.
All right, so let's make this personal. Let's turn this whole idea into a practical test for anyone out there building software or leading a team. It really all comes down to one simple but maybe pretty uncomfortable question.
So just imagine, you take your current system, whatever it is you work on, and you hand it to a small, sharp team with a powerful AI coding assistant. What would they do? Would they be excited to rebuild it from the ground up, or would they look at it and just refuse to touch it? Because if the honest answer is that they'd run for the hills, well, you already know you have a problem. The only question left is whether your culture has pre-authorized you to go back to that starting line, or if you're going to spend the next year arguing for permission while a competitor just goes ahead and gets it done.